Hi Pensacola, it's your Mayor Grover Robinson here. It's hard to believe it's been 1 week since I've come on board, but we're busy here in the city of Pensacola and I want to talk to you about some things that are going on. First, it's the holiday season. We've already passed Thanksgiving and we are beginning the celebration of Hanukkah, and I'm very proud to have been with some of our Jewish citizens in Pensacola and recognizing Hanukkah here with the lighting of a menorah here at City Hall. We've got many holiday seasons going forward, and we hope that you and your family will all be safe as you celebrate them here in Pensacola. We have several things happening right now, most of which we're continuing to work through transition. My transition team started last week, and we'll be meeting again this week. I know that many of those transition members have met with city staff, and we are already beginning to work on solutions that will help move our community forward. We hope you'll stay in touch with us and stay focused with us as this transition team moves forward. Secondly, today we had our first press conference, my weekly press conferences, and it was very good. There are some things we're continuing to work on as we move forward, but we are certainly going to be putting out as much press as we can for you to be able to know what's going on in your city. Finally, one of the things that came up was about Triumph, and Triumph will be meeting this week in Walton County on Friday, and I will be going over. We have two important projects. One is at the airport and one is at the port. At the airport at this particular time, we will be continuing to work forward to close the gap on the money commitments we need to get the project started for ST Aerospace. So we'll be continuing to work on that. The second will be the port project that we are working with IHMC, and we are very excited about what we have to do there. These are some of the things that we have going on, but again, this is the holiday season. It is getting cooler. The other thing is that we want you to be very cognizant of fire safety. Look at your outlets, look at your heater, a variety of other things that you have, especially if you have space heaters. Make sure to keep them away from any curtains or other things. Very important that we look at fire safety as the weather turns colder and we get to the holiday season. We want you to have a fun, safe holiday season here in Pensacola, and we'll continue to be working with you. Until next week, we'll look to see you again. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like we said, we're going to be getting better at this stuff, but we promised you we would have an opportunity to come in here and brief you at least on what's going on. It'd be a case of where we could talk to you, but you could also ask us questions. So we very much wanted to do that. We campaigned on that, so we want to get moving forward. First off, it's been a great first week. Very happy to be here. Big weekend. We had some positives, also some negative news, but we're going to start with the positive. I want to say a big congratulations to the Bryant family, who has Five Flag Speedway. I was out yesterday for the Snowball Derby. I know they had a little bit of problem with the weather, but they got off a great event, and it was a very nice event. I think when we see this as a shoulder season event, it really brings a lot of tourism to Escambia County and to Pensacola, and we're very excited about that. I think while I was there, first I was there 10 minutes, I met somebody from Washington State and from Arizona and from Utah, so I was amazed to see there were people from that far that were coming to Pensacola just for racing. So there were a few racers from Canada, so we kind of were the racing capital of North America over this weekend. Second, I'd really like to say my appreciation to Rabbi Mendel with the Chabad House here in Pensacola. Some of our citizens here are already starting the holiday season. Hanukkah has already begun. We had last night a lighting of the menorah here at City Hall, so I really appreciate him being involved in that and allowing the city to participate with him in that, certainly as some of our citizens are celebrating their festivals and seasons this year in December. So we had a really good weekend. We did have a couple of down notes. I'm sure you probably heard there was a lady found deceased in the park there on 10th Avenue in Cervantes. While we are continuing to work with that, we from at this point, everything I've talked to Tommy, Chief Leiter, and to the PPD, at this point the expectation is that it was natural causes. It was an unfortunate thing, and we're very sorry about that. But again, at this point, we're continuing to work on it, and as we go forward, I want to talk to you about some maybe solutions that we have that we would certainly like to see, at least going forward, from the city's perspective. At this point, I haven't heard anything back from the coroner, so I don't know, but the expectation was that it was simply someone who was homeless and died of natural causes. But we are still working on that. Other than that, we've had a good first week on some things that we're looking to go in. I'm going to answer any questions you want to answer, but I'm going to kind of talk about a couple things I know we're working on in case you don't happen to ask me about them, so I can talk to you. There are a couple things in walkability in downtown that we're working with. One of them that was expressed to us was Tarragona Street and the need to really do some four-way stops there. What we see is we are really seeing the historic area beginning to connect with downtown. And we've always had Government Street, which has been a good pedestrian crossing. But now with Southtown and the Y, we are really seeing a need for Tarragona and Intendencia to have a four-way stop. Last week, coming into office, is one of the things I heard on the campaign trail. I talked with Derek Owens, Chris and I did, and he indicates that sometime this week we will be getting a four-way stop in place there. At this point, we're just looking at Intendencia, not necessarily Romana. But we certainly understand that we have things growing together, and that's a good thing. That now our historic district is really growing pedestrian-wise to our downtown. It really kind of expands. This will, though, necessitate the need for us to begin to look at sidewalks and a variety of other things that we talked about during the campaign. I don't have any plan at this particular moment, but I can tell you that will continue to improve as we move forward. But the first pedestrian will be getting a crosswalk there. Another issue that we continue to work with, there's been some concern about the tree and the loon earth there. We certainly think that is a great opportunity to really experience and make things safe for pedestrians. I know that Chris, I haven't had a chance to talk with him since Friday. He went and met with the fire department. It is our goal that tree was permitted. It was specially grown for that spot. We want to see that tree continue to be there, but we want to work with the fire services to make sure they can handle all the needs that they want to do in that area. But we think with the Y in Southtown there, the whole purpose of the Loon Earth was to make sure things were safe for pedestrians. So those are some of the things that we have going on at this particular time. There's other things that are happening. Obviously, we continue to work on the sort of a settlement for the Fish House lawsuit, but we have not. I was hoping to have something I could brief you today on, but we have a couple of technicalities we're still working through. I know we also have some things with the ARB. I haven't had a chance to talk to Chris. I know he went over the weekend to talk to the Sanger, so we're looking at that one, and we're also looking at the Garden Street building, so the old school board. So again, these are some of the things that we are doing, and we're going forward. And I want to first apologize to a few of y'all who walked in. You were on time. We were early, and as I said before, I didn't think anybody else was going to show up, so I just started talking when I saw a few people in here. So again, please give us your patience as well. We're learning as you're learning, so we will do a little bit better, and I will make sure we wait till exactly 9:30 next time. We kind of jumped the gun a little bit, thinking I didn't want anybody else waiting here. So if we didn't answer, we didn't talk about things that you talked about as you were walking in, we're happy to talk about anything now.
Triumph Gulf Coast grant. We know that that's dependent on getting almost over $300 million worth of commitments on funding by the end of the year. What's the exact shortfall left over from the Hayward administration, and who's the team that you've got working on this?
At this particular time, we do have a shortfall. We've gotten in several funds. We've gotten in letters from a lot of entities. We did get in $25 million from DOT. There was an additional $25 million that we have not been as successful on. There was about $5 million we're short on what we thought was going to come from the federal government in the EDA, and there was about $10 million short with the governor's fund that we're still working on. So we are roughly about $40 million short at this particular time. If we can secure the $25 million from DOT, which is our biggest thing that we're going after right now, if we can secure that, we would have enough to continue to work forward. That's the biggest issue we've got to get secured. We are on top of that. We're going to go to Triumph on Friday. We'll be there at the meeting. Also, on the Friday meeting will be I think the Julie Shepard and IHMC's the port project's also on there, so we'll be there for that as well as the airport property. But at this point, we're still in a shortfall, and we're working to get those.
So the amount's about $40 million
at this particular time. That's where we are.
All right. Who's the team you have working on it?
It's the team we have that sort of got us here. We are still working with those individuals. I've been reaching out to both to Don and to Matt Gates. We had a briefing last week while I was in Tampa, and so we continue to work with that. Chris is getting on board with it, and we're trying to figure out where we need to go internally and externally to go forward. Certainly working with Florida West and trying to put those things together. One of the problems is obviously transition. I mean, we didn't even know we don't even know who the Secretary of Transportation is going to be. I know that Scott was down in Orlando. He met with some people last week. I've yet to catch up with him. We have a meeting on Wednesday this week to brief where we are and then go forward. So that's kind of where we are at this particular time, but I think we'll get there.
The 25 million, is that sort of just a formality still in your mind, or is that something that still needs to be made happen?
We haven't gotten the exact wording. We have received a 25 million from Florida DOT. We need an additional 25, so it was a $50 million request. We've received 25. We are still working on the other 25, and that's going to be, again, one of the problems is we got a new governor. We don't even know who the Secretary of Transportation is going to be. So all of these things are things that we don't even know how to, as we're trying to ask. But we have been working with Enterprise Florida. Scott was down there last week. We're going to get a briefing this week, and we're going to go to Triumph. Yes, Jerry.
40 million is a lot of money. What happens if you don't get that?
I think we're going to be able to work it. It's just going to be how we figure out how to do it. I mean, 300 million is a lot of money. I mean, when you consider what we've already accomplished, well, it's probably a little bit over 200 million. But with the first one, I think when you look at what we've done there, we can figure out what to do. I mean, this is one of the things we were made aware of. We thought it was all finished out, and we ended up we got less than we thought from a couple of things, and we're still working on them. But that's kind of what government is. Every day you come in, you don't exactly expect, but you keep working. So, at this point, I think the biggest challenge for us is knowing who's going to be, we know who the new governor is, now knowing who's going to be the new Secretary of Transportation and trying to figure out how we work that into the work plan with DOT. But the good news is from the state of Florida's perspective, I mean, we have 1,300 new jobs that will probably generate out, that have a fairly significant multiplier. So I think we have like I said before, no one else is going to the state of Florida right now with this many jobs in hand and the opportunity to expand employment and economic opportunities here in Florida. So we feel, I mean, that's something we have that no one else has.
Mayor, go ahead. Somebody have a question?
Go ahead.
It's something that somebody asked is, obviously the fish hatchery didn't go in at Bruce Beach. Have you had any follow-up conversations yet at all to find out whether that might still be a live option for another location in Escambia County?
At this point, we have not. I mean, everything with the state of Florida is really in flux at this particular time as they're in transition. They won't obviously transition over until January. So probably in January we'll know more as to how we go. We plan to at least reach out to DEP and see what can happen. But at this point, we have not had anything. It's been lower on the totem pole of all the other things we have pressing on in front of us right now.
Mayor, you've taken over 800, roughly 800 employee organization. Talk about a little bit about how you've looked at the culture of the organization, steps that y'all have taken.
Well, one of the things we did right away was put out a survey, and I really appreciate the transition team and Quint Studer helping as we move forward and looking at that. I think that allowed us to begin to say, the questions were, what are we doing well? What could we be doing better? And if you were me, what would you be focusing on right now? So those were due, I think, last Friday. So we are just now getting those in and haven't had a chance to take a look at them and see what's going on. But that'll also be done this week. The other part is we are just trying to institute in what we've got. I've got Chris on board, and so I'm very excited about having him here. And so from that standpoint, we're just beginning to do what we need to.
The former city administrator, Eric Olson, he discontinued the HR manual back in May. Do y'all have an HR manual that you're operating under, or what's going on?
I see Keith nodding in the back, but I have no idea. I mean, this is one of the things we want to work with the transition team. We're asking them to evaluate and look at some of our internal practices. I know from that standpoint, they met last week, was their first meeting. They will be meeting again this week, and I'm looking forward to being there as a part of it. I did talk to Quint, Mr. Studer, over the weekend. and we did have a discussion about some transition things that are going on. And I know several of his team members have been meeting with our staff. I know that I saw Chief Leiter last night, as I said, at the Hanukkah lighting, and he told me that he had met with Connie Bookman. So I know that we are beginning, we have several people that are meeting, and we're trying to answer all their questions. I am told we have a policy manual, but obviously we'll be reevaluating everything. I think it's not going to be an overnight thing, Rick. I think it's going to be it's going to take time. But we are evaluating everything we have right now and how we do it. And some of these things, like even this press conference, so we're just going as we go forward. So we'd ask some patience as we move forward.
It sounds like a lot of what you're dealing with the state is wait and see, and obviously you have the 90 days until you get the reports back from your board. How much is due now, and how much is wait and see what happens in a month or two?
Well, I think you got to be doing things now, but obviously there are a lot of things we don't control that will happen. I mean, internally, things that are happening here at the city, we can begin to move those things along as we see solutions. Dealing with the state, I think there are things we've got to be working right now. We're meeting, I know, this week trying to look at legislative requests, so we've got to be moving forward on the legislature. But the things we deal with the executive branch, we're obviously playing some things in December that we're going to keep working on, but some of it is wait and see.
How well did the city do during the storm over the weekend with stormwater management?
That was very good. We feel like we did well. I talked with Derek on Saturday. I called him a couple times, check up on him. I talked to Keith. We talked about things as well, what was going on. We seem to, everything I hear, there are a few spots that we know are trouble spots. One of which I've talked to Derek about is we have flooding on 17th Avenue just south of Cervantes. That is my understanding. We did check that drain, even though it is on the state system, it is clogged. I talked to Derek about trying to get somebody out there to get it unclogged. So we're working on a few of those. We have some other problem areas we know in Barrancas, some around here, the Main Street, the old sewer plant. We got to continue to keep working on those. So one of those, I was talking with somebody last weekend about looking at a legislative request that would help maybe find a way to maybe bring the water table down in that area because you have such low elevation right there around where the Main Street plant is. So again, we will continue to work and see what we can do. Those solutions will continue to be moving forward. I don't have any direct answers at this point, but I know the things we can work on, like clogged drains and other things, we're already on that.
I just have a couple of comments.
Yes.
First of all, congratulations on your successful run as being the new mayor of Pensacola. I'm not here to bash the previous administration, but there were two problems that I had as the publisher of Out Front magazine. I never could get through to communications. It was like pulling teeth. I mean, they got a system. I understand automation. I understand the times that we're in. But at some point, you need to be able to talk to somebody and not be told to leave a message. Someone will get back to you. No one gets back to you. And I've done that a number of times. I didn't put my staff on it. I put myself on it to make sure that I was personally experiencing the communication problem that I was having with the city of Pensacola, both from a business standpoint and from a private standpoint. So it's good to see this starting off Monday's press conference with the mayor. Here again, the previous administration, they started off, and then the next thing I know, communications and transparency got pushed out the back door. I mean, it got to be pretty bad. And so I'm enthusiastic about where things are now. It's good to see you in the position that you're in, but I'm hoping that your committee will address that situation. And I'm not trying to talk about anybody who may be a carryover from that previous administration, but from a media standpoint, I personally think that communications really need to be improved. Transparency, without question. We need to know more because there were a lot of decisions made that should have been given to the public for us to read in the daily paper and in the end weekly, since he's here, that we made a boo-boo. That cost us a lot of money, and we didn't know as the general public what was really going on until by the time we learned what was going on, the city had lost a case or they had something that happened that cost the public taxpayers a lot of money, and the media, except for those who were inside. And very rarely did that happen that you were inside. But I just think that hopefully your administration will address that regarding the media. And lo and behold, this calling, and they give you where you need to go, and then a tape comes on as if we are interested, leave your message, we will get back to you, and no one gets back to you. So that's something that I think really needs to be addressed.
Well, Mr. Leroy, I certainly apologize for the experience you've had in the past. We're working on trying to improve that. Obviously, that's why we started here, and we wanted you to be able to ask real questions and us be able to give you the answers we have. I will say the good news is I see two members of my transition team in the audience. I see Brian Ware and Cena Madison. Cena is right behind you, is in charge of transparency. She probably would be happy to talk with you about some of these things and how we can do better. I'm talking with the staff, and I've told them my expectation is that they get back to you right away and get you answers of what we can do. If we don't totally know the answer, we're going to have to tell you at this particular time we don't exactly have a full answer that we can give because we're still working on it. So we're going to be as transparent as absolutely as we have the information, we're going to put it forward to you. But there are things that we don't know at this particular time. We're still working on trying to figure out where we have our $25 million from DOT, and we're working on that as we move forward.
Let me just give you one small example and I'll be through. There's this lady who lived on Intendencia Street, who lived there for, oh my gosh, because she died at about 93 years old. She was very prominent in the Intendencia to A Street back towards downtown. And there were some of her family members were concerned as to what was the procedure that they could go by to qualify her for possibly having her name mentioned on a street near the area. And I happen to have known the family, and so they called me and asked me could I find out some information. And I told them I thought I could. It started out with phone calls, then it started out with me coming down to City Hall, being led up on the floor that I was supposed to see whoever it was, given numbers and everything. That was like 6-7 months ago. And if I know anything more about what the procedure is now, then I know now, and I know nothing because they never. I was given 2 or 3 names. I went back over. If I go back over my notes, I could supply the names, and I'm not here to supply names as much as I'm here to say I still don't know what that procedure is, and I'm part of the media. It just seems like I would have been able to answer that family, and the only thing I can tell them is that nobody's getting back to me. I don't really know where to go. And those are the kind of things that I just found out just irritated me. It really bothered me that we just could not get through. And then you got people, your public information officer, your this, your that, and yet when you try to reach in, it was got to be pretty pitiful. I don't want to stay on this, but this is important to me that I be able to talk to somebody at some point rather than this machine, and then nobody gets back to you.
Well, let me just say that's not our expectation. That should not be what's happening. So I would totally agree with you. I would say though at this point, I'm not really sure what our policy is, so we're definitely kind of making it as we go forward, and I will check and see what I don't know how we deal with those particular items, so I look forward to figuring out. If we haven't fully established one, then we will establish it, and we will get it back to you, Mr. Leroy, and tell you at least what we can do so we can give you an answer one way or the other. So I think that's one thing is as I see staff in the back, we will talk about what is our policy and how we do that, and we'll get something established where we can at least give you an answer and at least tell you where we are. You deserve that, and that's what we will be committed to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Have you had a chance to check in on the status of the port study? I think my understanding was it's supposed to be something public by this point. I could be wrong, but have you had a chance?
The early part of October.
Well, I think there was something that was briefed forward to the previous administration. We have not seen it at this point. It's one of the things I'll talk to Keith about at this point when we get done and Chris and see where we are. I think it did finish out before the old administration left, but I have not seen anything specifically on it. I do know, obviously, one of the big parts for me and what I think is going to be the future of the port is some of the research that's being done, marine research that's being proposed by IHMC. They will be going forward to the Triumph Board on Friday with their request. I talked briefly with Julie Shepard. She is on my transition team doing legal. but I've talked with her briefly about the port issue, and we certainly want to see it be successful too. So I'm looking forward to going Friday to Walton County to speak on behalf of that project and be there in support of Julie Shepard and IHMC and Kim Ford.
It's never been entirely clear to me whether the Bayview Cross case was costing the city money. I know Beckett has volunteered their services. Do you know if we're paying any legal costs in connection with that court case?
There are a lot of things in our legal right now I don't know and don't understand. I'm trying to work through as best we can over there. So I don't know at this particular time. I would like to, I haven't had a chance to really sit down with anybody over there about where we are on that legal case and what's going on. I would like to find a solution. There are a lot of things, some outstanding cases that we have that I would like to find solutions that we don't have to go to court, we don't have to get involved. That's what I'd much rather be involved with. I have not had any briefing yet on the Cross case, so I'd love to figure out where we are on that as we move forward.
What's your process for city attorney?
Yeah, that same question.
Okay.
Same exact question.
We are working through that at this particular time. I talked to a couple people that I thought might be interested in there at this time. We're sort of continuing the process. We're probably going to just have an open process come at the first of the year. I know I talked with Chris. If we didn't have somebody in by the time we got here, he had reached out to Neighbors Givling to kind of give us some assistance for the interim, and we would start a process and we would go do a search and try to find somebody, open it up and ask for applications. That may be the direction we're looking to go. Obviously, this week is kind of going to be a big week for figuring out where we are on the legal status on our stuff. So we will see where we are.
Is Lisa still the city attorney?
She is the city attorney at this particular time. Yes.
And who was it? What firm you asked to help you with this?
Neighbors Givling, I think, is one that I was very familiar with from FAC. I know Chris had talked to them, just reached out and see if they could do something interim with us.
Okay.
We haven't engaged anybody. That was just a discussion. But I was certainly more than happy to work that way. I have a very good relationship with them. They did a lot of stuff with the Florida Association of Counties. They know municipal law. If we need somebody to help us for a few months and be an interim, they can help us, and we can begin to establish a search. So that my preference would have been to have somebody in the position, but at this particular time, I don't have anybody at this time. So it does appear that we'll be going with the search. Jeremy, I saw you in the back. I was going to get you, but your front media people have jumped in front of you. But go ahead.
Just to continue with the attorney, do you plan on bringing one person in right now, or I know Quinn had mentioned possibly additional?
Well, again, I plan on having. My expectation is that we would have an in-house team, but I would like to bring in an attorney and allow them to build their own team. That would be my expectation of that. I don't want to get into running those things. I'm not the attorney, and I don't want to begin to figure out what's the best way to run an internal team. But I want them. My goal is to hire a good city attorney and allow them to put in a legal process. And I think that is something we need. We, already here, you've already mentioned to me about 2 lawsuits and other legal action we have. We have a variety of things going on at the city that I think we need to get control of. And see, one of the things I'm just learning is I should have brought water to the press conference beforehand. So I told you, we're going to be working with this.
You mentioned it right as we were coming in. There's going to be a new 4-way stop. I thought I overheard you saying.
There is. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Intendencia in Tarragona, at the Y right there where Southtown is. We are seeing significant. Government's kind of always been the connection between the historic district and downtown, and we are seeing more, which is a good thing. We're seeing more pedestrian access going across Romana. The problem is the way that some of the cars are, it's almost hidden at that intersection, and not only for pedestrians but also cars, it is fairly dangerous. I went there the other day just to kind of look at it, and there was a truck parked right on the west side of Tarragona. If you're coming from the west going east on Intendencia, it's a blind spot. You just don't see them at all. So we talked about, how do we begin to make that better? I've heard that from several people about pedestrians that have been going to the Y and in that area that was real dangerous. So we reached out to Derek, and he said yes. It didn't so much warrant it from a traffic standpoint, but the pedestrian traffic is significant enough that it's time for us to do something there to help the pedestrians, keep them safe, but also keep cars safe as well.
Do you foresee like DIB's role in downtown parking changing at all?
You know, I think DIB will be evolving over the next couple of months. You know, I think we'll see something there where we'll continue to start on that process. I mean, we were I guess we were sworn in on Tuesday, but unfortunately I had to go to Tampa for some outstanding business that I had as a consortium chair down there, and so again it was one of those things where I was not here as much, so we were just starting this process. DIB is something we want to address. Parking is something we want to address. It has not been as close to us as some of the other items, but it's going to be one of those that you're going to see DIB change. We just haven't had a chance to, Kevin, to address it right now, and but I think over the next couple of weeks we'll be addressing it a little bit more specifically.
Are you going to stay as consortium chair, or are you going to roll off?
No, I told the consortium on Thursday that I will not be there. You know, I wasn't sure what I was going to do the last time I met with them, because I wasn't sure obviously what the election was going to turn out. But I think one thing that showed this past week is if I'm serious about doing this job, I can't be doing that job too. And they're capable people in Escambia County, and they're capable people within the consortium system that can do that, and I'm very comfortable about that. It was nice to go my last meeting and sort of finish us out on a couple of key decisions we had with trying to move forward the state expenditure plan. So I was very happy to be there, and I appreciate Escambia County allowing me to be there. But my major focus is the city of Pensacola, and I need to be focused on that. And I've done it. I've carried out my duties. I have no idea who they will put forward as the new consortium member, and then in January the consortium themselves will be voting for new chairs and things. So they'll have their elections, and I'm confident they're going to put forward people that can do a good job. I mean, you know, if you haven't seen it, that's a document that's got very little press, but it truly is amazing. I think I actually have. I thought I had my copy of it in there, but I don't. I mean, when you look at it, it's an amazing document to think that we have what we did for 23 counties, put together a document that will really put forward, you know, nearly 100 projects that will really improve the environment for the Gulf of Mexico. You know, there's a lot of discussion going on in the Gulf, both in the south and central at this particular time, dealing with the issues of red tide and the other things that have come out of Okeechobee. So, you know, it's not just it's things that came after the oil spill. It is very much focused on things that are very timely for the state of Florida right now with water policy. And I know I met with several people. I know that at least the Florida Association of Counties is very focused on water quality for the state of Florida as we move forward. They're putting a water task force together. I look forward to catching up with the league and figuring out what they're doing, and hopefully we can be as involved with those things as well. But again, I've enjoyed my time, but it's time for me to focus on Pensacola. Okay.
What's something, you've been in office about a week now, what's something you know now that you did not know last week?
How challenging our legal department is right now, or how challenged they are. You know, I mean, we just have some things that are challenges there. We gotta figure out how to tie these up, and like I said, right now I'm trying to tie one settlement up at a time and keep us moving through. But there's a lot of things going on. Let me say this: there are a lot of good things going on in Pensacola right now that are happening. There are some things that need to change, but by no means do I think that we are having, you know, there's anything terrible. I just think there are things we can do better, and we want to focus on doing better. That's what we're going to be doing. I'm excited to see what the employees tell me are ways for us to do better. I think that's going to give us a lot of idea as to how do we begin to implement some things that will be better. But, you know, there were some things that we did not expect coming in, and one of those was the challenging that we have over there. So all the more important reason for us to find a city attorney, and if we got to go out and do a search, we'll go out and do a search.
Challenging, like nobody knows what's going on? Challenging, like the workload is too high? What do you mean by challenging?
Challenging, just that we have a lot of settlements out there and a lot of things that we, you know, where we are in trying to figure out exactly how we run that department and how we can perhaps get a better grip so that we're not spending so much in legal fees. Adam?
The lighting system on Cervantes Street from Pace Boulevard back to A Street. There's been a lot of accidents and a few fatalities. And I think the previous administration began the process of trying to improve the lighting system. But there was something that I read that said that because the Department of Transportation has to come in on it in some respect, it may be 5 or 6 years before the lighting and everything is the way it would help the pedestrian primarily, because there's a lot of crossing of the streets. And I know that something has been done, but I didn't know whether or not you're just getting here. Are you aware that there's a big problem in that lighting system?
I'm very aware of the problems we're having on West Cervantes, and I will say a lot of the credit needs to go to Commissioner May. He has been at the forefront of that. The county was there, and we will continue to work with the county, and we will do what we can to make that area safer. My understanding was the lighting was supposed to be going in immediately, and I will follow back up with that, but there are other things that are supposed to be happening. There are parts of there like they had some median protectors for crosswalks. That could take a little bit more time, is what my understanding of this was. That those things, the implementation, there were about 4 things we asked for in there, and some of those things will take longer, but some of them can go in right now. These will be things that we will be going forward with Secretary at DOT, the local Secretary Gaynor. I've been working with him as commissioner, so I look forward to reaching out. And again, we just haven't had a chance to sit down and say, what are the things we need to be going forward, and how do we do that? So, like I said, we've sort of been drinking from a fire hydrant at this point, but it's one of the things on there. My understanding was some of those things are happening immediately. Some of them will take time, but we will continue to press DOT for those solutions, and we'll work with them however we can to help make them happen. And we certainly will work with the TPO and the county as well. Well, I thank you all. Oh, Jeremy.
Yeah. So you tapped Quinn Studer to head your transition team.
Yes.
He's obviously got a lot of investment in the community, a lot of stake in the community. Over the years, there's been critique and concern ranging from he's getting sweetheart deals to he's getting a raw deal. Giving him such a prominent position in your transition team and shaping your tenure as you come into office, how do you plan to find the balance in that equation?
Well, I think on that standpoint, Quint's never asked for anything one way or the other in what's going on. In fact, he's one of the ones that says, hey, everybody's got to be a fair process, and everybody's got to participate. And I think he would expect a fair process in anything he's doing. I've never known him to do anything but what was above board. It's one of the things he's always preached has been ethics. That's one of the reasons I thought he would be very good at that position in moving forward. The other part is simply he does this. He does this for corporations all over. So if he gets paid money by these people to do it, corporations, to tell them how to make the transition successful, if I could get that expertise and I could get it for free for Pensacola, it would seem like I would at least reach out and do that. He is, all of us have different civic involvement. He has been very focused on bringing civic engagement to here through Civicon. The communications I've had with him have all been, how do we make the city better? And again, I think at this particular time, if there are things that he has and that he's involved with that come up, we will take those through with the process that happens. And I've never known him to ever ask for anything that he didn't go through the process that everybody went through. And so from that standpoint, I have no issue with him one way or the other.
He was pretty emphatic in the first meeting about everybody ought to watch Civicon, everybody ought to have studied that as background material. In your opinion, is Civicon a blueprint? Is Civicon a resource? Is Civicon, are you trying to implement the suggestions of the Civicon panel?
I think Civicon, there are 2 issues at Civicon. I think one thing that Civicon has done is simply made us more aware of the things that are happening. I think the awareness of it is great. I mean, it starts making you think differently, and so there's that part. As far as the actual implementation of what's going on, I think it does have some best uses. I think everything that's brought here has something that is applicable to Pensacola. Is it all applicable? I don't think it's all applicable. It's not 100% of what I'm going through. But I think I've been to every one of them, or if I wasn't at the event, I did go to the morning after session. So, I mean, I've talked with all the people that came here, and certainly some of them are more applicable than others. Some of them are a little bit more further off. I mean, there's some things that I think we're not quite ready for that step, but those are things that we would like to do in the future, absolutely. So again, there are a series of parts that have been in there, but I think it does introduce us to some best practices. I think if we could begin to look at how we implement those into those best practices, and also just the awareness of just civic engagement. I thought Senator Graham, I mean, that was what he came. I mean, he didn't really come and say you need to do something one way or the other. He was basically talking about how do we get our people back interested in doing civic engagement and bringing that forward. So I think from those standpoint, I think the Civicon has done its job of getting us to discuss things. As Quint says, a lot of times he never used to never think about how wide lane width is. I said years ago, when I travel, all of a sudden I started noticing things like, the buses, the fire stations. I mean, things in my life that I'd never thought about when I traveled, and now all of a sudden I look at them and I'm like, okay, how do they do this? How do they handle detention and retention issues of water? So it does make you look at things differently, and I think from that standpoint, that's a good thing. And I think all of our citizens, if they come up with solutions, already, I mean, these are things we've already been looking at, and citizens are coming up now with solutions for us all the time. If they can help point us in the right direction, that's a good thing. Well, thank you very much for attending our first one. As I said before, we will next time I'll wait for 9:30, and I apologize for those of you that came in late that we got started a little earlier. People were sitting here, and I just thought I needed to start talking. So this is we're learning like you're learning. We're going back and forth. We will keep working. Mr. Laura, we owe you a response as to what is our policy for how to engage us. We will work on that. I don't know the policy right now, but we will get that. If there's something else and you have other questions, please get in touch with us. Come to me, come to Vernon, and we will try to get your answer as fast as we can. Thank you very much.